We are looking at an integer unit, so let's start out with some basic vocabulary that students will need to know for integers. Okay, so integers are whole numbers and their opposites. So numbers like 1, 2, 4 are integers. Numbers like -3, -5, -7 are integers. So the positive integers are all these numbers that are greater than 0. The negative integers are the integers that are less than 0. Positive and negative numbers have opposite directions or values. That means 3 is the opposite of -3. 7 is the opposite of -7. Before we move on, notice that I haven't given you any numbers like -1/3. That's not an integer. -25/100. That's not an integer. 7 3/4. That's not an integer. So we're just talking about positive numbers like 1, 7, and 8, and negative numbers like -100, -205, -307. Absolute value. Now that's an important term here. Absolute value is a number's distance from 0. Absolute value is always written as a positive number unless you're being asked for the opposite of the absolute value. So you think about our number line. It stretches in both directions to infinity. 5 and -5 have the same absolute value. Another example would be 20 and -20 have the same absolute value of 20. Absolute value is an important integer concept. The additive inverse, that's another important integer concept. A number that results in 0 when you add them together is the additive inverse. So my example here is 20 and -20 are additive inverses because 20 plus -20 equals 0. 132 and -132 are also additive inverses because when you add them together you get 0. So remember, you're dealing with an additive inverse when you add the two numbers together and your answer to the problem is 0. Opposites, two numbers that have the same distance from 0. So that's going back to that earlier term of absolute value. 5 and -5 are opposites. 5 and -5 are also additive inverses. When you add them together, you get 0. A signed integer either has a plus sign in front of it for the positive or a negative sign in front of it when doing the negative. When doing integer computations, errors with signed integers are the most common kind of mistake. What we're going to do next is we'll get into some of the rules.